Hey everyone, this is Jane with Barlow Herbal, and in this video I'm going to share with you some information on a beautiful plant in the daisy family called Feverfew. Now the botanical name is Tanaceum partheneum, which is a mouthful. But the information I share with you in this video is not meant to be medical advice. This is meant to educate and entertain you only. So please make sure you do your own due diligence when it comes to identifying and consuming any plants or herbs. So Feverfew is one of those plants that grows all over Europe, all over North America. It's a perennial plant that will come up every year, and it makes a beautiful addition not only to your herbal garden, but to your flower garden. And Feverfew actually got its name because it was known as a fever reducer. And what it's been known for and used for mostly are migraines and headaches. So that would make perfect sense, right? So Feverfew is a bitter. The parts of the plant you use are the leaves and the flowers. My favorite part are the leaves, simply because it's easy to grab some. You could actually make a poultice if you get a bee sting, because Feverfew has some beautiful properties like inflammation and pain are some of its best known properties, not just topically in the case of a wound or an insect bite or a bee sting, something like that, but when it comes to consuming it for headaches and pain and inflammation. It's also got digestive properties. It's good for menstrual relief. There's so many beautiful benefits to Feverfew. In fact, what started happening in the 1970s is they started studying a really famous alkaloid in Feverfew called Parthenolide and its ability to go after different types of cancer. And I remember when my dad was around, one of the things that he taught us is that Feverfew, with this alkaloid Parthenolide, it can stimulate adult stem cells, which is something that I've been talking about with people for many, many years, because I believe that if you look back at not just history and the way it's been used, but all the studies that have been done, especially since the 1970s. In fact, there's a few studies that I pulled from, and I'm going to put links to them below this video so you can kind of do some of your own research as well. Feverfew is just one of those plants that, like I said, it comes back every year. And if you plant it near other plants that you want to protect from insects, Feverfew can act as a natural insect repellent, just in the fact because it's got this pungent smell. It's a bitter. Insects don't really like it. So if there's a Feverfew growing next to a different plant that maybe is part of your medicinal herb garden, it can help protect it from different insects and different pests. In fact, I planted a couple years ago, I have this beautiful flower box, and I planted a Feverfew plant and an echinacea plant. And first of all, the Feverfew plant took over, and I'm going to be transplanting my echinacea to a different part of my garden simply because the Feverfew just wanted to take over. And that's one of the beautiful things, is that this will grow into a kind of a big bushy plant with all these little white flowers with these yellow buttons. All of the seeds live in the button, in the little yellow part of the flower. And you can use the whole flower, you can use the leaves. And one of my favorite things to do with Feverfew, because it is so bitter, and it will make a super bitter tea, but one of my favorite things is to make a tincture out of it. And I've made fresh tinctures without drying it, but I've also dried the Feverfew leaves, ground them up in like a little spice grinder, and then actually made it into capsules. Now we make a Feverfew tincture, so even though I make my own homemade tincture, I have it readily available to me, and I have access to it super quick, even in the winter if I don't have any that I've cured myself. But because tinctures have a super long shelf life, and I love using my own homemade remedies, that is what I typically like to do. So Feverfew has, like I said, a huge long history of use in older times. So let me share some of this with you. In ancient Greece and Rome, Feverfew has been documented in medicinal texts as far back to ancient Greece and Rome. Basically, they recognize it for treating headaches and other ailments. And that's what I actually love about plants and plant medicines that's coming back, is these are things that we've been doing for centuries. In fact, this is how still most of the world's populations and most of the people that live in the world, they still turn to and use plant medicine first. I think in the Western world, we just got sidetracked over the last 100, little more than 100 years by all these pharmaceuticals, and it became not cool to use plant medicine and other reasons too, right? Feverfew is even used in medieval European medicine. In fact, when I see that, that reminds me of this, in fact, a really old version. I think it was in the either late 1960s or the early 1970s, when a version of Romeo and Juliet came out that is still my favorite by far. And I remember the friar in there going out into, the monk going out into his herb garden to mix up a potion for Juliet to make it seem like she had died, but she was really just asleep. And my mind goes back to that scene, which I watched that movie over and over and over the years, one of my very favorite movies. But I believe that there were these little yellow daisy flowers when he's out amongst his herb garden. And I would be willing to bet that that was Feverfew. So when I think of medieval times, that's what I think of. During the Middle Ages, Feverfew was widely cultivated in monastery gardens across Europe. It became a key remedy in medieval herbalism, especially for treating fever, inflammation, and pain. In fact, that is one of the things that I turn to if I ever get a headache. That's one of the very first things I turn to is Feverfew. Now, there's a couple of things about Feverfew that you need to be aware of as far as using it with, like they suggest you don't use it if you take aspirin. So if you take aspirin, it has blood thinning properties, and Feverfew also has blood thinning properties. But if you're going to be taking Feverfew for a headache, or you'd be taking aspirin for a headache, there'd be, besides the fact that they both are blood thinners and you don't want to do that, if you're going to take something natural, you don't need to take something like aspirin. So Feverfew is definitely one of those things, like ginkgo biloba has also natural blood thinning properties. So besides aspirin, if you are on a prescription blood thinner, then this is some of the important information to know about Feverfew and about other plants that might affect prescription drugs that you're on. So what I would say is check with a functional medicine doctor, a naturopath, have a relationship, a connection with a doctor that can help guide you, or, an herbalist or someone that you trust, and can help guide you when it comes to things like this. And so those are just some of my very favorite things about Feverfew. Also, it's not suggested for children under the age of 2 or pregnant women. So those are just, like I said, a couple of things. Now I'm going to go over this quick list of health benefits of Feverfew. I've mentioned some of them, but it's amazing for migraine relief, anti-inflammatory and pain relief, menstrual disorders, fever reduction, digestive aid. It's got amazing antioxidant properties, and it also has been shown to improve mental health. So what I would say is dig a little bit deeper into the beautiful properties of Feverfew. And at the very least, if you are a person who likes to add some variety to your flower garden, Feverfew is a wonderful addition, and it's perennial. It keeps coming back year after year. In fact, one of the things that's kind of hard for me is to cut my Feverfew back because it's so pretty with all the white flowers. But when you do that, it actually makes it grow better, like with any other plant. So I'd love to know what you think about Feverfew, and if you have any experience or love of Feverfew like I do, and what do you do with it? How have you used it? Do you like the taste? I find the taste, like I said, very, very bitter. It reminds me a little bit like valerian. Valerian root is definitely a bitter, and some people even think valerian smells like dirty socks. I've heard that before. But Feverfew is definitely something to have in your arsenal and at the ready if you ever need it. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Let me know what you think about this, and we'll see you next time.